ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे फुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधना बोधितम्। लोके सज्जन षट्पदैरहरहः पेपीयमानं बुधा भूयात् भारत पंकजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। Okay, so hope all of you are able to chant this. I just want to share with you some chanting rule so that things become clear before we go on to the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so just bear with me for a moment. Some were asked, the chanting classes have been arranged, and after this class, I will explain to you what we will do. Here is, this is also in your folder. This is the summary of the IAST, which means that transliteration system, like what certain transliteration marks mean. So these, I think you should review in your chanting class. I won't go through it here, but in your chanting class, you can review thoroughly so we pronounce correctly. Just to give you an example, Like if it has a dot underneath, then it is in this line. So ta, tha, da, dha, na. Whenever that letter has a dot underneath. And we also see that whenever there is a line on top, it's a long vowel. So these are just some key pointers to pay attention to when chanting. But in your chanting class, you can go over that. Another thing I want to just bring to your attention, which happens in the Bhagavad Gita a lot, is there is this sutra called Hashicha. These sutras are to, whenever some words are very long or they follow a certain word, there is some kind of sandhi that happens, some kind of transformation to the words that happen. So this is just one that occurs a lot in the Bhagavad Gita. Whenever visarga means this dot underneath the H, which we pronounce as aha. Whenever visarga is preceded by a short a, and followed by hash. Hash means these words. C3, C4, C5 means column 3, column 4, column 5. These letters, whenever it's followed by these letters and ha, what happens is it gets converted to u, okay? So when it follows any of these letters, okay, and when it follows ha, and when it follows semi-vowels, it gets converted to u. So this is just to give you an example. Namaha Brahmane, this word Namaha Brahmane, I hope you can see it. Namaha Brahmane, it gets converted to Namo Brahmane. So this Namaha Brahmane gets converted to Namo Brahmane because of Hashicha. Okay? So it's actually Namaha Brahmane, but because of this rule, it becomes Namo Brahmane. Now in the Gita Dhyanam, when we say Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dogdha. So if you read the verse, it will say Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dogdha. This is verse number 4. But when we chant it, we break it. So we say Sarvo Panishado Gavaha. We chant the original one. We chant Gavaha instead of Gavo because we're breaking the sandhi. So this happens in verse 4. And I know some of you had asked about this. And same way in verse number 9, Pashyantiyam yogino yasyantam, right? So this, we break it to Pashyantiyam yoginaha. We break it to Pashyantiyam yoginaha yasyantam. So when we are chanting, we break this sandhi. When we're chanting, this, what got transformed to an u, it gets transformed back to the visarga form. Okay, so this is something that you should keep in mind because it happens quite a bit in Bhagavad Gita, and I just want to make you aware of it. All right, further details, like I said, you will see in your chanting class. Now let us chant the ones that we have covered so far. So we have covered from verse number 2 to 10. So we will chant that and then we will go forward. Sanjaya Uvacha. We'll chant together so you can read with me. And this will refresh your memory. Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharyamupasangamya Raja Vachanam Abravit Pashyetam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata Atra Shura Maheshvasaha Bhimarjuna Samayudhi Yuyudhano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharataha Drishtaketushchekitanaha Kashirajascha Viryavan Purujit Kunti Bhojascha Shevyascha Narapungavaha Yudhamanyushcha Vikrantah Uttamojashcha Viryavan Sobhadro Draupadeyashcha Sarva Eva Maharataha Asmakam tu Vishishtaye Tani Bodhadvijottama Nayaka Mama Sainyasya Sanyartham Tan Brahmimite Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitinjayaha Ashwathama Vikarnascha Somadattistathaiva cha Anye cha bahavaः shuraः Madarthe tyakta jivitaः Nana shastra praharanaः Sarve yuddha visharadaः Aparyaptam tadasmakam Phalam bhimabhirakshitam Paryaptam tvidame Phalam bhimabhirakshitam. We did 11 as well. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthitaha bhishmameva virakshantu bhavantas sarva eva hi. All right. So, sometimes you will notice me adding a visarga after the word. For example, in verse number 4, if you turn to verse number 4 for a moment, I say Atra Shura Maheshvasaha, because when you actually break that word, you pronounce the visarga. And you will notice that in verse 11, some of the old books have sarve, but it should actually be sarva in your book. Okay, so please make sure that you correct that. Bhishmam eva bhirakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi. Okay, and then when you do the sandhi, it becomes sarve. So I want us to learn the Bhagavad Gita really thoroughly, verse by verse, and that's what this class is for. So sometimes I will just let you know if there is something there that we have to be careful of. But otherwise, you please feel free to ask your chanting class teachers. Okay? All right. So where are we now in Bhagavad Gita? We opened the floor with Dhritarashtra's question. We all know. And after Dhritarashtra asked his question, then Sanjaya starts to answer. And remember, Dhritarashtra's question was, Mamaka, what happened to my people? And then the Pandavas, those other folks, what happened to them? So, of course, Sanjaya starts to tell him first what's happening in the Kauravas side. And we see verses 2 to 13 is all what's happening in the Kauravas side. Exactly whatever is happening there, Sanjaya is telling him. And the first thing that happens is this Duryodhana. He approaches his Acharya, Dronacharya. And this Duryodhana is actually very afraid. He's very afraid because he's telling his Acharya, look at the army of the Pandavas. Look at their vast army. Mahatim Chamum, look at them. And he's also telling his Acharya, look, Acharya, at all the warriors that they have on their side. And this is like he enumerated 17 warriors in the Pandava side. So look at all of that. And he's telling this to Dronacharya as if Dronacharya can't see. It doesn't know for himself. He sees right there what's happening. But when you become afraid, you see, Duryodhana's afraid because he's in the realm of adharma. Whenever we're in the realm of adharma, we're afraid. Huh? Whenever we do something wrong, there's no way in our body language we can be fearless. Like if somebody's speeding on the highway and there's a cop, immediately you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? There's no relaxation. There's panic. There's fear. What if I may get caught? What will happen? What if I get a ticket? Every time we engage in adharma, you see our body language, you see our speech, our whole thing changes. And that's what happened to Duryodhana. His whole body language changed. He approached his acharya. He's using all these indiscriminate words. And he starts talking and talking and talking. And then after he talks, he's expecting Dronacharya, console me, please tell me something, He didn't say that, but as if he's expecting his teacher to at least say, don't worry, we're also big. We have 11 Akshohinis. But Dronacharya stays silent. And so Duryodhana has to almost console himself. And so he consoles himself by enumerating his army and saying, this is who we have, and this is what we have. And therefore he says it all out loud. And in verse number 10 in particular, when we saw last week, we saw how Duryodhana is split. So in Sanskrit, in verse number 10, this word aparyaptam has two different meanings. It can mean unlimited, and it can also mean insufficient. So what Duryodhana is he's doing is he's trying to show that our army is unlimited because it's protected by Bhishma. Whereas the Pandava army is limited because it's protected by Bhima. This is what he's showing. So what he's showing, we take the aparyaptam to be unlimited. But what he's feeling is aparyaptam, insufficient. Our army protected by Bhishma is actually insufficient. And the one protected by Bhima, even if he's just Bhima, is really sufficient. That's what he's feeling. He's on the edge. And right now, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do, and he tells everybody in verse number 11, what we saw, Sarveshu ayaneshu means in all directions, yatha bhaga avasthitaha. All that army which is stationed in all directions, what do I want you to do? He says, bhavantaha sarva. All of you do only one thing. Bhishmam eva abhirakshantu. Just protect Bhishma. Protect Bhishma because he is that which is the greatest warrior. He is the commander-in-chief. And Duryodhana knows, even if he said in the previous verse that everybody is giving up their lives for me, laying down their lives for me, he knows that people are really there because of Bhishma and because of Drona and not for him. The fact that he says everyone's giving up their lives for me only shows his arrogance and how he's so into himself. And so we have this Duryodhana who's just, nobody's paying attention to him. Nobody's saying anything to him. So what happens now? What happens now is Bhishma comes. He does what a commander-in-chief ought to do in this situation. And what is that? Let us read. Okay? So we are on verse number 12. Tasya sanjanayan harsham.
Tasya sanjanayan harsham.
Guru vriddah pitamaha.
Guru vriddah pitamaha.
Simhanadam vinadyochaihi.
Simhanadam vinadyochaihi.
Shankham dadmau pratapavan.
Shankham dadmau pratapavan.
Tasya sanjanayan harsham. Guru vriddah pitamaha. Simhanadam vinadyochaihi. Shankham dadmau pratapavan. What does Bhishma do? He sees this Duryodhana who is just so helpless, who's so hopeless. And they have to fight a war. And he's the commander. So what Bhishma does is he blows that conch and he lets out a lion's roar. So Pratapavan. Pratapavan means this mighty and glorious. Who? Kuruvriddaha. Kuruvriddaha means the oldest of the Kurus. The oldest of the Kurus, Pitamaha, that grandfather who, Bhishma, what does he do? He tasya sanjanayan harsham. He sees tasya of Duryodhana sanjayan harsham, means he wants to rouse up Duryodhana's cheer. He wants to cheer up Duryodhana because Duryodhana has to fight a war. He can't be this hapless, hopeless person like a fearful chicken going to Dronacharya and telling Dronacharya all of this. And so to rise up, to cheer up Duryodhana, what does he do? Simhanadam vinadyo chaihi. Simhanadam vinadya means having sounded a huge lion's roar. Uchaihi means very loud. He roared like a lion. And Shankham dadmau. He blew his conch. Shankham means conch, dadmu. He blew his conch really, really loud. So what does Bhishma do? Bhishma starts the war. He starts the war, right? This is the sign of starting the war. And the aggressors of the war are the Kauravas. And Bhishma had no choice because Duryodhana was just, clacking like a chicken. And so Bhishma roared. And when Bhishma roared, this was the start of the great Mahabharata war. And after he roars, everybody else on the Kaurava side, they roar too. We'll see verse number 13. Tata shankascha bhairyascha.
Tatah shankascha bhairyascha.
Panavanaka gomukhaha.
Panavanaka gomukhaha.
Sahasevabhyahanyanta.
Sahasaivaabhyahananta.
Sahasevabhyahanyanta.
Sahasaivaabhyahanyanta.
Sashabdastu mulo bhavat.
Sashabdastu mulo bhavat.
Tata shankascha bhairyascha. Panavanaka gomukhaha. Sahasevabhyahanyanta. Sashabdastu mulo bhavat. So what happens? Tataha. And then Shankaha, these battle conscious. And not only battle conscious, Bhairyaha. Bhairyaha means these kettle drums. So just imagine in your head these conches, these battle drums. Panava. Panava means these tabors, these smaller type drums. Anaka. Anaka means these military. Anaka means these military drums. So these different kinds of drums. Panava, Anaka, Gomukha. Gomukha means these cow horns. So not only drums, not only conches, but horns. All kinds of sound was happening. And how was that? Sahasa. That was all sahasa. Quite suddenly, abhyahanyanta. It blared forth. And sashabdaha. That sound, tumulaha, was incredibly tremendous. Abhavat was. It was incredibly tremendous. So the Kaurava army, all of them got together. They started blowing their conches, battle drums hitting, blowing their horns. All of them got together, and that sound was tremendous. And in this way, verses 2 to 13, Sanjaya gives the whole picture of what happened in the Kaurava Paksha. Because he asked Mamakaha, what happened in Mamakaha? Now we will see what's happening in the Pandava Paksha. Now he switches over. So one narration over, now Sanjaya switches over the other one. It's a very systematic Sanjaya, very systematic reporter. So let us see what's happening on the Pandava side. Tatashveter hayir
ततः श्वेतेर्यहैर्युक्ते
mahati syandane sthitau
महति स्यन्दने स्थितौ
madhava pandavaschaiva
माधवः पाण्डवश्चैव
divyau shankau pradadmatuhu
दिव्यौ शङ्खौ प्रदग्मतुः
tatashveter hayir yukte mahati syandane sthitau madhava pandavaschaiva divyau shankau pradadmatuhu. So now here in this Pandava Paksha, what Sanjaya is doing is he's giving subtle messages to Dhritarashtra. He's giving all these subtle hints through these verses. He's saying, oh Dhritarashtra, you want to know what's happening in the Pandava side? Let me tell you. Tataha. Tataha means on the other side. Then on the other side, what do we have? Madhava. Madhava, we know Lord Krishna. Madhava and Pandava. Pandava here means Arjuna. We have Madhava and Pandava. And what is this Pandava? Shweter Hayer Yukte. This Arjuna has these white horses. This Arjuna who is yoked with white horses. And what happens? Sthitau. They are seated. And where are they seated? Mahati Syandane. They are seated in this great chariot. And what did they do? Divyau Shankau. So dual. They blew their conches. Pradad Matuhu. They blew their divine conches. So actually, if you see this verse, verse number 14, this is the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita. You see, Dhritarashtra's question was, what happened? What happened in Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra? In the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Dhanurdhara Arjuna. Wherever there is Krishna, wherever there is Arjuna, the one wielding a bow, there will be wealth, there will be glory, there will be victory. And that is what's the answer to Dhritarashtra's question. 18 chapters later, he gives that answer to Dhritarashtra's question. But we don't have to wait 18 chapters later because the answer is right here. If you want to know, this is who you're up against, Dhritarashtra. This is who your sons are up against. Number one, you have Madhava. You have Lord Krishna. And we saw the meaning of Madhava. Remember when we did that shloka, that mukam karoti vachalam, which we chant in our invocation. Ma means Maya. Dhava means the Lord of Maya. You have Madhava, the Lord of Maya. This God who can command the whole entire Maya. This is who you have in that team. Then you have Pandava. You have this Arjuna, and this Arjuna has divine horses. Remember in Mahabharata, when they were in Khandava Prastha, there was this fire. There was this fire in the forest. Actually, this Agni Devata wanted Arjuna and Sri Krishna to create lots of fire in the forest because, he wanted to get rid of all the evil things in that forest. But whenever he tried to well up with fire, Agni Devata, what happened was Indra Devata would rain. He would make it rain because he was protecting Takshaka. And so Agni Devata asked Arjuna and Sri Krishna for help. And they said, well, Arjuna said, we can help you, but we don't have weapons. And it was then by the Devatas, Arjuna was gifted a divine chariot. with a divine flag, with white horses, divine horses, with this quiver, with never-ending bows and arrows. He was gifted with all of this by the Devatas. So this Arjuna, he's not ordinary. He's called Shweta Vahana, the one who has these divine horses. He's extraordinary. He's not just some person that you're going to be able to defeat. And if you look at Sri Krishna and Arjuna, they are seated in the chariot. They're completely relaxed. Unlike Duryodhana, who's running around like a headless chicken. They are coming in their full glory, in their divinity. When you have these two, what do you expect to happen, O Dhritarashtra? In and through these lines, he's trying to say that to Dhritarashtra. Wake up, you can still do something. Bhishma fell, means because he's recapping this Bhagavad Gita. You can still do something. But Dhritarashtra, of course, like always, stays quiet. What happens after the Pandavas start to come in? With the scene turned to the Pandavas. Now, of course, the Pandavas are going to blow all of their conches. So let us see that part. Okay? Verse number 15 now. Panchajanyam Rishikeshaha.
Panchajanyam Rishikeshaha.
Devadattam Dhananjayaha.
Devadattam Dhananjayaha.
Paundram Dadmo Mahashankham.
Paundram Dadmau Mahashankham.
Bhimakarma Vrikodaraha.
Bhimakarma Vrikodaraha.
Panchajanyam Hrishikeshaha. Devadattam Dhananjayaha. Paundram Dadmau Mahashankham. Bhimakarma Vrikodaraha. So first, again, so you just see, one thing is studying the Bhagavad Gita. But when we learn how to chant, when we see how it is written, how it is delivered, and then when we go through the meaning, the whole package will be complete. We will be able to really connect with this scripture. Many people just pass chapter 1 and say, let's go to chapter 2. But in and through, there are these subtle messages. What is he saying? He says, Rishikesha. Rishikesha means Lord Krishna. Panchajanyam, his conch name is Panchajanyam. Dhananjayaha means Arjuna. Arjuna, his conch is Devadatta. That's the name of the conch. And Bhima Karma. Bhima Karma means the one who does terrible deeds. That's why he's called Bhima Karma. And who's this Bhima Karma? Vrikodaraha, wolf-bellied Bhima Karma. What did he do? Paundram. The name of his Shankha is Paundram. And it's Mahashankham. It's big, because he's a big guy. Dadmao. He also blew his conch. So first let us take Rishikeshaha. Rishikeshaha is one of the names of Bhagavan Krishna that comes in the Bhagavad Gita all the time. Rishika. Rishika means Indriyas. Indriyas, sense organs. So your seeing, sense of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. And it also means Antah Indriya, the mind. Okay? Isha means controller. So Hrishikesha, that controller, that enlivener of all of our sense organs and our mind is Hrishikesha. And his conch is Panchajanya. See, Lord Krishna went to Gurukula also. And his guru was Sandipani. So he went to Sandipani Guru. And he and, of course, you know, Balarama and Sudhama, right? He went to Gurukula. And as Guru Dakshina, he asked Sandipani, what can I do for you? And this Sandipani Guru said, my son was kidnapped by this Rakshasa, Panchajanya. He's kidnapped, and this Panchajanya, he lives in a conch. And so please bring back my son. And so Lord Krishna, he dove into that ocean. He relieved that son, brought the son back to the Guru, and he took that conch and he made it his own. And that's why it's called Panchajanya, after that demon, Panchajanya. So this is somebody who can, conquer any demon. This is what it's saying here. So you have Rishikesha, who can conquer any demon. Then you have Dhananjaya. Dhanam Jayati iti Dhananjaya, means the one who conquered wealth from all places. So if you remember in Mahabharata, they did that whole Rajasuya Yajna, remember in the beginning, and Yudhishthira's Rajasuya Yajna. Arjuna had to go to various places to conquer the wealth of the kings. So this is somebody who's defeated so many kings, Dhananjaya. And his conscious Devadattam, it's divine. It's given by the divine. Then not only that, you have Bhima, the one who does terrible deeds. And he's about to do lots of terrible deeds because he vowed to kill your 100 sons. So he's Bhima, the one Bhima, the terrible, going to do terrible deeds. And Vrikodara is wolf-bellied, means he can digest anything. He can digest anything. Anybody throws anything at him, he can digest it. He has a Mahashaka. This is who you're up against, Dhritarashtra. Think you can still maybe do something. But, of course, Dhritarashtra is professional in remaining silent. We will read 16, 17, 18. Ananta Vijayam Raja.
Ananta Vijayam Raja.
Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha.
Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha.
Nakulas Sahadevascha.
Nakulah Sahadevascha.
Sughosamani Pushpakau.
Sughosamani Pushpakau.
Ananta Vijayam Raja. Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha. Nakulas Sahadevascha. Sughosamani Pushpakau. Kashyascha Parameshvasaha.
Kashyascha Parameshvasaha.
Shikhandi cha Maharathaha.
Shikhandi cha Maharathaha.
Dhrishtadyumno Viratascha.
Dhrishtadyumno Viratascha.
Satyakischa Parajitaha.
Satyakischa Parajitaha.
Kashyascha Parameshvasaha. Shikhandi cha Maharathaha. Dhrishtadyumno Viratascha. Satyakischa Parajitaha. Drupado Draupadeyascha.
Drupado Draupadeyascha.
Sarvasha Prithivipate.
Sarvasha Prithivipate.
Saubhadrascha Mahabahuhu.
Saubhadrascha Mahabahuhu.
Shankhan dadhuh pritak pritak.
Shankhan dadmuh prithak prithak.
Drupado Draupadeyascha. Sarvasha Prithivipate. Saubhadrascha Mahabahuhu. Shankhan dadhuh pritak pritak. So again, this Sanjaya, he starts elaborating who else is there and what's happening. Who's next? Raja. Now you see here, Raja, he's referring to Yudhishthira, Kunti Putraha. This Yudhishthira is not the king. Remember, Yudhishthira is in exile. But yet this Sanjaya says, Raja, King Yudhishthira, because he is the rightful king. So Sanjaya has no holds bar. He tells Dhritarashtra like it is, Raja Yudhishthira. And what about this Yudhishthira? Yudhishthira iti Yudhishthira. The one who is stira, who is steady in war, Yudhi, is Yudhishthira. And he is Kunti Putra. Remember when Kunti Devi invoked Dharmaraja, she got Yudhishthira. So he is the epitome of Dharma. And that's why his conch is Ananta Vijayam, countless victories. Because Dharma can never be overthrown, overpowered. Dharma will always be victorious. Wherever there is Dharma, there is Krishna. Remember Mahabharata, wherever there is Krishna, there is Jaya, victory. So Ananta Vijayam, you have Yudhishthira. Then you also have Nakulaha and Sahadeva, and their respective conches are Sughosha. Sughosha means loud noise, Sughosha. And Mani Pushpaka with all gems. These are their conches. Not only that, you have Kashyascha, Kashyaha, the king of Kashi, Parameshvasaha, excellent archer, is king of Kashi. And Shikandi, Chamaharataha. This Shikandi, who's a Maharata, can challenge so many warriors. And who is Shikandi? The death of Bhishma. You're thinking you have people there, but Shikandi is the death of Bhishma. And you have Drishtadhyumnaha. Who's Drishtadhyumnaha? The death of Dronacharya. Remember, Drupada's son, Drishtadhyumna, is the death of Dronacharya. And you have Virat. Virat, where they stayed in hiding. It's a grand alliance. In Satyaki. This Satyaki, we saw in the Mahabharata war how he was just unparalleled. You know, that day, especially when Arjuna was going to defeat Jayadratha. So he is unconquered. He's the charioteer of Lord Krishna. Very, very close confidant of Lord Krishna. Not only that, you have Drupada. And Draupadeyaha. Draupadeyaha means the sons of Draupadi, the 5 Upapandavas. And you have Saubhadraha. Saubhadraha is Abhimanyu, son of Subhadra. And don't think that this son of Abhimanyu, son of Subhadra, Abhimanyu, and the Upapandavas, don't think they're like bachas. They're like, very young, 16, 17 years old. They're nothing. Mahabahu, they're great warriors. I mean, they're mighty armed. We saw what Abhimanyu did in the war. Don't think they're just ordinary people. And he said, Sarvashaha, all of these people, Shankhan Dadmuhu, they all blew their conches, Pritak, respective conches, Pritak, they all blew. O Prithivipate means the Lord of the earth. Who is this? Dhritarashtra. O Dhritarashtra, Sanjaya is saying, all of these people blew their conches. Lord of the earth, why? Because you can still do something. Something can still be done. Remember, even after when Bhishma was in the bed of arrows, he said, stop this war. It doesn't have to continue. Now imagine Dhritarashtra listening to all of this, but, not doing anything, not moving, not saying anything, just listening. Very, very sad state to be in. Okay, now we continue verse number 18. Saghoshodhartarashtraṇam
Saghoshodhartrarashtraṇam
Hridayani vyadarayat
Hridayani vyadarayat
Nabhascha prithivim chaiva
Nabhascha prithivim chaiva
tumulo vyanunadayan.
Tumulo Vyanunadayan.
Saghoshodhartarashtraणam hridayani vyadarayat nabhascha prithivim chaiva tumulo vyanunadayan. So what happened here? That what? Tumulaha means tumultuous, thunderous. Ghoshaha, that tumultuous, thunderous sound. What did it do? Nabhascha prithivim cha vyanunadayan. It reverberated. Vyanunadayan. Huh? Like not only sound, but after sound. You know that kind of sound that did not only sound, but after it also you feel the sound. You feel that sound because it's just so much. It's so overpowering. And that reverberated where? Nabhascha, in the sky, and prithivim, and in the earth. In the sky, in the earth, that whole sound reverberated. And what did that sound do? Vyadarayat. Vyadarayat, it shattered. It shattered Hridayani, the hearts of Dhartarashtrana, of all of the people associated with Dhritarashtra. So he says, oh Dhritarashtra, when these Pandavas blew their conches, that sound just reverberated like anything. And all of the people associated with you, their hearts shattered. Not only their physical heart, you know, that stress, that pressure, that duk, 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 duk. You know, like when the first time we were about to give a talk, the hearts like that, you know, you know, the physical also, but mental also, their enthusiasm shattered, their desire shattered, they're like wanting to go shattered. You know, because right when we in daily life, when there's a sports game or you know some kind of musical concert, what happens, how they welcome the people is they scream and they yell, you know, especially a sports game, they'll invite the people to come. You must have seen in Super Bowl. I did not see, but I'm sure it was there. Okay, so it must have been there. And people were coming in, and then everybody was roaring and yelling and screaming and everything, just to get the, you know, to pump the enthusiasm of the people. When you scream their name, when you shout their team, and there's also cheerleaders, there's also their mascot, all kinds of things they have just to pump up that morale, right? So these sounds, these battle cries are so important because they boost your morale. They get you up and going. And even in a music concert, you would have seen before the musicians come on stage, everybody's screaming and yelling, and it boosts the musician. It makes them feel good that they can conquer the world, that they can do everything and anything. And so the Kauravas thought that, hey, you know, they sounded their conch, they blew everything, their drums and all of that. They thought that, wow, we're ready. And their morale was so high. But then the Pandavas, they came. And when the Pandavas came, flat. Kauravas fell flat. Their hearts were shattered. And with this, now everything slowly starts. So you see, already in the beginning, the Kauravas are shattered. Already in the beginning. So now, again, Sanjaya switches over to Arjuna, the main character. And he's going to tell what's happening with this Arjuna. What is his stature? What is his attitude? What is he feeling like? That we see in verses 20-21. Atha vyavasthitan drishtva
Atah vyavasthitan drishtva
Dhartarashtran kapidvajah
Dhartarashtran kapidvajah
pravritte pravritte shastra sampate
प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते
धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः
धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः
ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम्
ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम्
इदमाहमहीपते
इदमाहमहीपते
अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् idamahamahi. So then, atha means now that the sounds have settled in. So imagine all of the conches were blown, and now that the sounds have settled in, what's happening? Kapidvajaha. Kapidvajaha, the one that has the monkey in the flag, Hanumanji in the flag. Pandavaha, that Pandava, Arjuna, Dhartarashtran vyavasthitan drishtva. Dhartarashtra means seeing the party of Dhritarashtra, vyavasthitan, seeing them stationed, drishtva, having seen them stationed. And what happened? Shastra sampatte. Shastra sampatte means the discharge of weapons, pravritte, about to begin. With the discharge of weapons about to begin, this Pandava, and how was this Pandava? Dhanurudyamya, he lifted his bow. He was just so ready. And tada, after that, Hrishikesham, to Lord Krishna, idam vakyam, this statement, aha, he says, Mahipate, O Dhritarashtra. So, O Dhritarashtra, this Arjuna, with that Hanumanji in his flag, when he saw the party of Dhritarashtra, he said, and he saw the weapon discharge about to begin, he looked at Lord Krishna with his bow in the hand, ready, and he said these words. Now, you remember Hanumanji's promise to Bhima. Remember in that Vana Parva, when Bhima and Hanumanji met, a very, very beautiful section of Mahabharata, which we saw, which I absolutely love. And Hanumanji says, you tell me, Bhima, what can I do for you? I can destroy the whole Kaurava army. And Bhima says, no, you don't have to do that because we have to fight our own battles. But you just bless us. And Hanumanji said, I will bless you by living in the flag of Arjuna. And O Bhima, whenever you roar, I will accompany your roar. That roar will be extremely loud. That was the promise of Hanumanji. Now you please see, you have Arjuna. He has Sri Krishna, avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu. He has Hanumanji, avatar of Bhagavan Shiva. Now, how can he go wrong? How is it possible that he falls? The answer is, it is possible that he falls. What does he say to Lord Krishna? This we will see next week. Okay? So what have we seen today? We have seen lots of conches. Now we have seen how that originally how the Kaurava party was so lively, ready to go. They were shattered by the Pandava army. Because of the goodness of the Pandava army, because of the characters of the Pandava army, and because they are on the side of Dharma. And we will see what Arjuna says next time. So I will say the closing prayer, and then please stay back because I have a few important announcements. And then following those announcements, I will answer the questions that you have posted in chat. What I do recommend is that by now you should all have the Bhagavad Gita book commentary. So please read and follow along. That way, you'll really get the story. Okay? Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.